Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
I was ready.
You're never fully ready.
I say yes because it's a hope. I speak with faith, Dan. I hope to be ready. Happy Tuesday. No. Happy Muse Day, Dan.
Happy Muse Day, yes.
Good to see you today. Happy Muse Day to you all. We are, the sun is shining. The fireworks have ceased.
Yes.
Getting better sleep. We're in a better place, right, Dan?
Indeed.
Hey, he's Dan Kent. I'm Shawna Boren, and welcome to the MuseCast, where we, I just got distracted by, Dan getting some goodies there.
I had to move my stuff.
You're fine. What's that book you got on top there, Dan?
This is, let's see, it's a book about traveling sheep.
Yeah.
So,
all
yes.
right. Yes. Very nice. Confident Humility by Dan Kent.
Yes.
Probably can't purchase it because it's always sold out because it's that good.
Yeah, I wish. Man. You know, it was 5 years ago in June that came out. So
Really?
Yeah.
You just had a book anniversary.
Yeah, time flies, I tell you.
When you're having fun.
That's right.
All right. Well, Dan, I know it's hard to believe, but we're still on the book of Revelation.
Yes.
We're still in chapter 5. We're just, rolling along, doing the thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything significant or huge that we need to talk about before we get into it, but I think everything's just good to go and normal. So I think we're good.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited to get into it.
Okay.
However, what was the sermon called? What was the sermon called?
Yeah, I don't.
It was your sermon.
Listen, there was much discussion, and by much I mean very little because I just didn't care. I'm like, I don't care. Just call it whatever. Yeah. I was being very literal, and Dan was like, Shawna, come on now. And I'm like, Dan, whatever you come up with, I'm gonna forget. So it doesn't even matter.
You know what?
Zero use.
Well, we talked about it, and then so it ended up being called Every Tribe, Language, People, and Nation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say what about every tribe, language, nation, and so forth. And
it's kind of a choose your own adventure.
It kind of is, yeah.
What do you want it to be?
Yeah.
I thought you had made a change, and I thought we had given that the thumbs up, but I guess someone overrode you.
We were going to call it From Every Nation or From Every Tribe. That's what it was going to be.
Yeah.
And we agreed on it. We said, yes, let's push it up and we'll make it happen. And obviously we don't have as much power as we thought we had because it did not happen.
We do not, and it did not. So
yes. So I mean, the fact is, though, they all kind of captures the idea of what we're getting at, and this all comes from the chapter 5, verse 9, and I'm going to read that before I do the summary, just so that it's in everybody's head as we move forward. But we're still in the throne room here, and this is kind of this happens right around when John finds out about the scroll and that the Lamb is worthy to open the scroll and so forth. And a new song is sang once the Lamb is worthy to open the scroll. And it goes like this: you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God members of every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom of priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth. And that's kind of the passage that you were focusing on. And that's where that tribe and people and language kind of idea comes from. And so that was your verse. And you kicked off the sermon right away by summarizing where we're at, of course. But what I really liked is you kind of kicked off the message by just kind of sharing your own kind of where you place your hope and why you are drawn to this idea and why you're also frustrated about the idea, because we seem like we're very far away from this vision that John sees. And so I appreciated that, just kind of like where you're coming from as you approach this text. And in America, it's weird because in some sense America is closer to this vision than a lot of other countries, because we have so much diversity here, and yet there's also so much hostility between the peoples and the tribes and the languages and so forth. And so it's lots of hope that has led to a lot of disappointment. But that doesn't mean that what God is calling us to is the same thing, even though it might kind of look similar. I think it could be something very different, and that's sort of where you kind of went. Is that, the book of Revelation is about unmasking truth and unmasking the truth from lies, and to revealing the lies that keep us from truth. And definitely in the world, as we strive to be like this vision, we have all sorts of obstacles in the way. And you shared some examples of that, where in our world, we have power hierarchies, and we have, all sorts of incentive to separate and to kind of judge other people who are different, and to judge them based on these arbitrary external kind of metrics. And there's like this incentive in the world to create these hierarchies and these separations, and it's inherently anti-unity, which is sort of what John is calling us to, is to unity. So we have all these systems in place where we feel like the onus is on us to seek power and to protect power, and that kind of gets in the way. It sabotages everything that John calls us to. And so what you argue, and I think this is right, is that John doesn't prescribe how to get here in like a nice 4 easy steps, but he casts this vision of where we're going. He gives us a glimpse of how people should be and how we could be. And it's interesting because as the first time when you gave this on Saturday, I remember thinking, it's like, what America is this collection of so many cultures and so many languages, and yet there's not really unity here. And it's similar to in John's vision, where you have all these tribes and languages and nations, except there's unity there. And so much of the reason why there's not unity here is because of these power dynamics and all that kind of stuff. And part of that is that we use the whole idea of diversity and unity itself as a way of getting power over others. And it becomes part of our political discourse and our political bickering. And so this idea of diversity and unity and all of that, those get co-opted by these political powers, and it sort of sabotages our striving toward this thing that God calls us for. And I thought that was an important point that you noted. But ultimately, in the kingdom of God, there's not going to be these hierarchies of power, and it's going to be an eternal kingdom, and there's going to be plenty for everyone. And even on a basic level, I mean, so much of, I'm kind of ad-libbing onto your sermon. I hope you don't mind.
You're good.
All right. But even and we've talked about this in the past, like if we really are going to have eternal life, then that's one of the big kind of power levers that the powers use now, is they threaten your life, and your life is endangered. This is the most important election ever, because the future of America is at stake, and the future of your prosperity, and the future of your, ultimately it comes down to, you're going to die. And it's death is always the pressure that amplifies the importance of all of these moments on earth. And so the powers use that against us. But in the afterlife, if we really do have this eternal life, that's no longer going to be an option for the powers to use. And so we're going to have to learn how to be united without manipulating one another. And this really sort of exposes kind of the difference between the lamb and the dragon. And you kind of show how, we so often live in a dragon mindset where it's us versus them. And in order to make the vision of unity work, we have to live in this lamb mindset where we become servants of one another and where we become hospitable, which is the one of the kind of main messages that we got to Woodland Hills Church in March and April. And so hospitality becomes sort of the antidote to all of this kind of power over and struggle and so forth. And I love the way that you put it here. You just said that when you have a heart that is open to others, that reflects a heart that is of the kingdom. A kingdom heart will be reflected in our heart for others. And you just kind of bring it back to a pretty basic kind of solid fact, which is God is inherently hospitable. And if we are made in the image of God, then we should also strive to be hospitable as a fundamental part of ourselves. This should just be the default. I am by default hospitable because God is by default hospitable. But for us, a lot of us, we have to learn how to be hospitable. And I think that your story that you shared about Henry Nguyen and how he took care of that boy or that young man, I thought was a very touching sort of example of that. But a heart open to others reflects a heart of the kingdom. And I think that's a great takeaway message. And it's a good spot for this message to land in the series as well. So great job, Shawna. I thought it was fantastic. And I was thinking like a sermon that's shared on Saturday is very different than what gets shared on Sunday a lot of times. And I can think of a few of my own where I'm just like, man, that would have been not as good if I would have shared what I had on Saturday for what I had on Sunday. What you shared on Saturday was great, but boy, you really brought it to a higher level on Sunday, and I thought you did a great job. So part of me wishes everyone could see the Saturday product just so they could see the Sunday product, but then that would also apply to me, and I don't want anybody seeing my Saturday. So right,
you don't want any part of that.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is so true. That the metamorphosis that can happen from Saturday to Sunday. And the funny thing is, I think because I shared just kind of my lament at the beginning, I did have folks, they were very curious, like, what the heck, what was wrong Saturday? And I'm like, oh gosh. And so I'll just say this. Yeah. Saturday I had content and I felt super disassociated from it. I just felt like it was just words on a page. It just wasn't, it was just odd because I had no feeling or emote. I don't know if emotion's the right word. I just disassociated. That's just the best way I can explain it.
That's a good word for it. No, that's a great word for it.
Okay,
I've been there. I mean, I've totally been there.
Yeah. And so, and listen, I'm not just saying this because he's my MuseCast partner, but like Dan asked me a question. He's like, hey, so why does this part of scripture matter to you? And so I just kind of just started saying stuff and I was like, but I'm so frustrated and I'm so ticked off because of da 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 da. And he's like, well, just say that. Just be honest and just say, hey. And that is one of the many reasons why I love our church, is because we can just be real. We can literally say, yeah, this is the vision. And we can also admit that we're not living up to the vision, and let's talk about it. And let's try to not be what we are. I was super appreciative of that. Wow. And and once I was able to say that, and then also, and you know this, Dan, whenever you are preparing something and there's any sniff that it could be, co-opted to the political game, the polarization of our world, you kind of start to think through all of the things that could be said, and so I just had all of the yeah buts in my brain, and it was just like I would have to, this would be like a retreat weekend for me to go through all of the, and I know you might think this, but this, and I know there's folks who are going to say this, but this, and I just had to, and so then again, just saying it out loud, like, hey, this is not agenda driven. This isn't left side, right side, blue, red, whatever. I don't care. Progressive, liberal, conservative. I don't care about, that's not what this is. This is just scripture. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of head and heart work, I think is the way Mary put it, to get from
Yeah,
Saturday
yeah.
to Sunday.
Hmm. No, and Mary put it well. I think it's a good way to put it. And you know, it's interesting because like a lot of times the head work is easier than the heart stuff, and
Hmm.
expressing that interest and that, you know, the connection that you have with it. A lot of times that's the hardest, and for all sorts of, you know, spiritual and psychological reasons, we tend to be defensive about kind of showing that, you know. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think, but it's so valuable. I mean, that's that's where the spiritual money is.
Hey, the money dance. I like it. Yeah. And so I think if I had to like, respond to your summary and to the Sunday sermon, I would say that so many times, if you think of, you've made many cross country road trip, right? Like
Mhm.
you and Barb, and you think like from where we are to where we're going, that's a distance.
Mhm.
And what is the way in which we're going to navigate getting to our destination? And what do we need to avoid? And what would be the most proficient? What would be the most helpful? Like you have to think through all of these things. And sometimes if you're just looking at the mileage between where you are and where you're going, it can seem really big and just like it's never going to happen. We're never going to get there. And I think that was my heart. It's like where we are as a people. And I just, for whatever reason, just saw a lot of just the throughout the
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
I saw it. I saw it. I was hearing about it. And I was just like, oh, at the same time studying this stuff. And even the weeks leading up to it. And I was kept trying to like, nope, I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to focus on that. But it just was everywhere. And for those of you who live in other countries, you're just so lucky, right? Like you have no
Yeah.
problems. Everything's
Yeah.
good. You guys are
Yeah.
living this stuff out. So yay
Yeah.
for you.
You can get a full night's
We
sleep. That's
right? You
nice.
get a full night's sleep. Yeah. You're not traumatizing pets in the
That's
environment with all
right.
these bang
Yes.
bangs going off. Anyway, we digress. Yeah, we had some family business that we have to take care of here in our country. And so
Yeah.
it was all just very loud.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I lost my train of thought. But so anyway, yeah, at the time when I was trying to like really um live into the passion that I feel for this vision, for this unity and this future, and just the beauty of the diversity and the thing is they're all worshiping the Lamb, right? Like that's what brings us all together.
Hmm.
And yeah, so just lamenting that that's not where we are and how far it seems that we have to get there. And so taking not the only power and othering folks and not being hospitable, those aren't the only ways in which we are hindered from living out that beautiful vision, but they are real ways. And
Yeah.
so lest anyone think that that was an exhaustive explanation of why we're not there, no, it's just something that stuck out in my pea brain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, but I think it is fundamental, even if it might not be exhaustive. It is I think a core, one of the core kind of forces that keep us from that. I do have a question for you though.
oh, okay,
Uh,
I'm nervous, but okay.
yeah.
Usually it's the other way around, but okay,
Yeah,
let's go.
well, this is say. Now normally we ask, you know, did you leave anything out or anything like that? And we can
Hmm.
definitely talk about that as well. But this has been kind of churning in my head, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. One of the things that interests me about this is that you have this sense of unity. In
Mm,
fact, Jesus's prayer in John 7 is that 7 or 17, that they may be one even as we are one. And there's like this, I mean, the fact that we have a unity that's as profound as the Trinity by itself is like, oh my, that's unity. I mean, that's like, that's a closeness, you know. And then you've got John's vision where he sees what that looks like, and there is, you know, they're all singing together worshiping the Lamb like you said. However, there's also 12 thrones. And
mm,
so there is this sense of separateness as well. So there's not
mm.
just unity, there is also this separateness there. And so what do you think of that? Like what do you think of that separateness, and how does that play into this vision that John has and what we are called toward?
That is a really good question. And so this is just off the cuff. It can mean many things, but I think that when we talk about, I'm just going to talk about like us in the here and now. Like when we talk about coming together, I don't think it's a total forsaking of how we are made, how we are built, who we are. And I think that so many people assume that when we say everyone come together, it's assuming everyone come together and be the exact same.
That's right.
And that is not at all what I'm saying. I don't think that's what is being laid out. I still think there is space for individual, let's just say personalities, giftings, character, but we all come together and the unity comes in who we are worshiping and who we are trying to mirror in our character. And so I think many times when I hear people groups or churches or whatever say, let's be inclusive and let's welcome folks in. Yeah, that's their heart. But then it's like, welcome them in and then make them act like we act and behave like we behave. And I don't think that's necessarily the goal. Like we have this beautiful part of our church. They are the Congolese congregation, and they are refugees who have come over and they've settled here, and they have worship time in our church, and they're a part of our church. But I think it would be, and this is maybe not at all what you're talking about, so I'm so sorry. This is where I went, but I think it would be really unloving to say, yes, come be a part of us, and then do everything like we do, because this is the way this is what it means to truly worship God. No, like they have a relationship with God and they worship him in a way that really speaks to who they are as a people, how, where they were born, how they were wired. And so I think we honor and respect that. It doesn't mean we all become vanilla. No, we can be, cookies and cream and mint chocolate chip for whatever reason, or Napoleon or whatever. This, all the flavors. I just, I think
that's so is... you. You're using ice cream flavors. That's so you.
I know, right? Just... Is it snack time?
That's hilarious.
I don't know. That's one possibility.
That's great.
What do you think?
I think that's sort of, that's pretty close to what I would say. I mean, I just think that, I think part of what's people say, well, all religions sort of say the same thing. And people will say things like, if you look at this vision of unity and that they may be one, even as the Trinity is one, well, that's what Buddhism says too, where we lose the illusion of ourselves into the oneness of the cosmos. And it's like, well, it sounds the same, but it's profoundly different, because what God is calling us into is togetherness, not uniformity, not the oneness is the togetherness. It's not, we don't lose ourself into the new collective. We maintain our selfhood, but we are not alone in our selfhood. We are together with others in their selfhood. And the Congolese church is a great example, because man, those guys, they get pretty raucous over there. The building shakes sometimes when they're like really getting into it. And that's like, why would I want to dampen that? I don't want them, and even like, that's out there. But I even think of like some of, white guy struggles with more kind of rambunctious worship, and that's why I'm so thankful that we have some diversity in our worship, and I get to be around a different type of worship than I would normally participate in, and I don't have to be that. I don't have to, but I can experience it. I can be with it. I don't have to be it. I can be with it, and I can appreciate it for what it is. And that doesn't mean I have to change who I am. Exactly. And I think that's beautiful. So,
yeah, and I again, I'm naive enough maybe to believe that you, in who you are and how you were born and where you were raised and your culture and your, whatever, fill in the blanks, is something that is unique for you, and your experiences with God and your relationship with God will have a different flavor than mine. then the person next door, then the person down the street, then the person in the aisle behind me. And that is grundiful. That was good and wonderful.
Get this woman some ice cream. Come on.
Need the ice cream. It's grundiful. Anyway, it's good and wonderful. And I think that for me to think, what could this person show me about Jesus? That is, first of all, that just makes me like ill to think that I would ever think that. But, and I think one of the points is that in some ways, in some subtle ways, in some ways not so subtle, we do think that we are better, that we know more, that we have it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore we need to be the teacher and not the one that learns from. And so that's part of the reason why I love the Nowen story, is because Adam had nothing really to give Henry. And yet it was in serving Adam and helping Adam in his daily functions that Nowen saw the face of Jesus and felt a love of Jesus like he had never experienced in the years of this incredible theology teaching that he had been doing. And I think that's why I was so drawn to that. It's just like, if we could just quit this, like, I think you've called it before, like the ladder of hierarchy, where we're just trying to one up one another and be better than one another in all the variety of ways. We could just really see some beautiful things and be a lot closer to the vision than where we are. But there are so many principalities, powers, people, crisis managers that love to, what was the word that we love that Bill used about
crisis entrepreneurs?
Yes.
Crisis entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Crisis entrepreneurs.
They profit off the crisis. So
absolutely. And they love it when we're sniping at each other and can't decide anything, so we can go on and on about that. But I just think we need to just get sick and tired of being played by all of that and realize that, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is love Jesus and love others. And we maybe go about it differently, but doesn't mean that we can't be together. So,
yeah, I think that's well said. That's a good answer. Well, did you have anything that you maybe you cut out, or that you didn't have time for, or that you would have liked to have spent more time on in your sermon?
I'm looking around for my notebook and I don't have it. So let me just think. Okay, first of all, I think I do a pretty good job of pulling things out before I get to the final, what it's going to be. Cause I usually start with, like most of us, way too much. And it's like, okay, not this page, not this page, not this page. And just recognizing that there are many people who look at this language of every tribe, language, people, nation, and they really want it to be a more evangelistic message. And so I'm aware of that. And there is some of that there, but that's just not where I felt like I wanted to go with this. There is, what was the one thing that I was really kind of diving into? And I was like, we had talked briefly, because I had a line in there about, what we're seeing here is the reversal of what occurred at Babel. And
that's
then we just I would have had to have unpacked that more. And I just
that was
decided
just stuff,
to leave.
That was good stuff. Save that for your next sermon.
I'll save it for later. Yeah. So, I think, let's see what else. I mean, you could get into more ways in which we other people without maybe realizing it, but gosh, I think just a few examples of that was enough, because they could just get really, so, yeah.
Wah. All right, let me ask you this.
Okay.
What is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Okay.
You can only have one more flavor for the rest of your life. What would it be?
This may be cheating. So it's pretty much hands down cookies and cream for me. However, I have in my later years discovered cookies and cream with the bits of cookie dough in it, the chocolate chip cookie dough, and maybe sprinkled with some brownie bites. A a little diverse combo is what I like. But if I couldn't do all of that, cookies and cream. That's the one for me.
That's a good one.
And it needs to be Bluebell. I'm sorry. It needs to be Bluebell. I don't know what
the brand matters.
Bunny is. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. How about you?
Well, unfortunately,
if you say vanilla, Dan Kent, I'm going to.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. What? We've known each other for a long time now. What about me suggests vanilla? Are you saying something that maybe I'm a little plain? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying like fig for you is candy. So I just want to like, oh.
No, I'll tell you. My favorite is Izzy's. Remember Izzy's? It was like a store here, and they're out of business now, unfortunately. But they had a salted caramel that, like I think they put some type of heroin in it because it was just like, whoa, this is amazing. Yeah, and that was salted caramels. That's my favorites.
Very nice. Well, there you go. See, we are still unified. We're good. That didn't split us up. So I'm happy about that.
That's right. Wow. We've covered unity, diversity, ice cream. I think it might be time.
I think it's time. I do think it's time. I think we have solved all the world's problems. And so it's a perfect time to get into Nugget time.
All right. Good. Well, would you like me to start since it's your sermon?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, I will start.
Sure.
And I think I've probably shared this before because every time we talk about hospitality, no matter what context, this is what I think of every time. And it just blows me away. But just how hospitable the early church was. Just, man, I mean, part of the reason why they exploded so much in numbers is because of how flipping hospitable they were. All the way up, even after Augustine kind of gave in to the powers and the church merged with the state and all of that. Well, then that thing all went pear-shaped, and then there was the Black Death and the plague and all of that. And then even then you had these Christians who were putting their life in danger just to be hospitable. And that's just how fundamental hospitality was to the early church. But one of my favorite examples is this. This is Polycarp. And Polycarp actually studied under John, who the Gospel of John. And so this is how early this is. This is like right there after the Gospels. Well, this is like, decades later because he's an old man. He's like in his 90s here. And so the authorities are looking for these Christian leaders, and they're bringing them to the Colosseum to be devoured by lions and so forth. And so they find him, and this is in an early church writing called The Martyrdom of Polycarp. And so it says this: on Friday, about supper time, the mounted police and horsemen set out, armed with their usual weapons, as though chasing after an armed rebel, which Polycarp was not. He's just this old man, And closing in on Polycarp late in the evening, they found him in bed in an upstairs room in a small cottage, and they came to arrest him. And though he still could have escaped, because he had been on the run and he had escaped from them several times, and the text says, well, he could have still escaped now, but instead he refused and said, "May God's will be done." So when he heard that they had arrived, he went downstairs and talked with them. And while those were present, being the soldiers and those present, marveled at his age and his composure under the circumstance. And they wondered why there was so much eagerness for the arrest of an old man like him. And this is the amazing part. Then he immediately ordered that a table be set for the soldiers, so that they could eat and drink as much as they wished at that hour. All he asked them is to grant him an hour so that he might pray undisturbed. When they consented, he stood and prayed, so full of the grace of God that for 2 hours he was unable to stop speaking. And those who heard him were amazed, and many regretted that they had come after such a godly old man. And I love that. I mean, here's this old guy, and he's like, they're gonna, and they bring him to the Colosseum, and that's where he dies. He dies in the Colosseum. But even though they're there to arrest him, he sets this table out for them, and it doesn't stop them from doing what they're going to do. It's just, this is what you do. You show hospitality. That's how fundamental this is. And I just love that story so much.
Oh, that is a good nugget, Dan.
Hey.
That's a 12 piece. That's a family size right there. I love it. Well, and I think, gosh, I'm so caught up in that was really beautiful. I think it just speaks to what we're talking about here. It's, you may not get a particular outcome by showing kindness and showing love, hospitality, but you will have shown something that is the heart of God. And I think anytime you're able to do that, that's beautiful. And the impact may not be seen in that moment, but who knows, how the soldiers' hearts were.
Well, and they were obviously impacted. The language there is that they just couldn't believe that they had to do this. And how could we do this to such a great man? And their heart broke for him, and their heart broke for the situation. And it's in that broken heart that God can really start to act. And,
amen. So good. We should have ended there, man. Oh, well, I guess I'll say a little something. In order to get there, that story that Dan just shared, and just like I said on Sunday, in order to get to the place of now, and we've got to start where we are. We can't get to our final destination, to these big grand places, if we're not willing to look at in our own life, how are we contributing to the divide? How are we othering people out of fear or out of anxiousness, out of hatred or whatever, out of frustration? We won't ever get to those beautiful moments where God can use us in powerful ways if we're not willing to smile at our neighbor who ignores us, or, just be friendly and kind. And I know that sounds so Pollyannish, be friendly and kind, Sesame Street, but no, we're never going to get to these grand places if we're not willing to start where we are. And my nugget is to really ask yourself, in any way, and in what ways am I contributing to this divide? In what ways is this gulf between where we are and the vision and revelation? In what ways am I a part of what is making that divide so great? And don't beat yourself up, but just, pray for God's wisdom. I think that's why we've been praying that Ephesians prayer over our community. Is give us eyes to see so that we may know the hope of the calling. And giving us eyes to see, I think a lot of times can just be moments for us to realize, oh man, this attitude that I've had, or the way I've seen this situation, or maybe I am absolutely right, and my convictions tell me I am absolutely right, but it doesn't mean I dehumanize or don't love. And so just be open to what God would show you and say to you in those moments. And I think we will all be pleasantly surprised, and maybe have to spend a little bit of time in prayer, just asking God to change our hearts and heal our hearts for thoughts and actions and attitudes that we've had. So that's my nugget.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's right. You got to start where you are. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that puts a bow on it. I think that's
puts a bow on it.
I think so.
Yeah, I love it. All right, you guys, the heart that is for others is a reflection of the heart of the kingdom. And so I just think let's do that together. Let's be that community that does that. That would be so cool. And I think the world would love it. And I think it'd be great. It'd be a pleasant surprise from what they've been seeing from Christian folks. So
that's right.
With that, we say thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to chatting. Thank you for your engagement and your involvement. And the biggest news of the day, MuseCast email is back up and running. Woo! Yes. So send us your stuff. Send us your comments. Send us your questions. Oh, he's so out of practice because we haven't had it.
Right.
We got to get Dan back into it. All right. MuseCast at whchurch.org. Have a wonderful week, you guys, and we'll see you next time.